Hello, my name is Ivy. I'm a disability rights advocate. My website is ivytrinity.com. It's a pleasure to be here today. I went to public school in the 80s and 90s in Williamsburg, James City County. I went to special ed preschool. So after that, I went to regular classes with my mom and non-disabled peers. Back then, it was called mainstreaming. Today, the model is a little different. It's called inclusion. I had an aide one-on-one waiting for me and handle my books. She was there for me only. With inclusion, I understand the special ed teacher is supposed to work together with the teacher to modify curriculum for students with disabilities. I had an IP, and one of the things it stated was I was to have the computer with me at all times. This was the 80s. The computer was big and it was very heavy, and even though it was on a desk with wheels, it turned out it didn't work for me to do my classwork on because of the time limits. Plus, at the time, accessible technology wasn't what it is today. I didn't have the equipment to speed up my use of the computer. Truth be told, I didn't have the latest technology until I graduated with the high school at Wilson Rehab. IDEA is a United States federal law that governs how states and public agencies provide early intervention, special education, and related services to children with disabilities. There was no fighting over my IEP. I now see how lucky I was that there was no opposition to it. I'm not sure if it was because it was still early after the ADA or the Education for All handicapped children age 75, or if it was because I was surrounded by more open-minded adults who saw my potential. I'm sure it helped that my disability was physical and not mental. Inclusion is a collaboration to teach children. There is no set model. I suppose you can learn techniques, but what was best for one child may not and probably won't work for another child. You have to be open-minded, patient, and be creative. In the inclusion process, adults will be challenged to give their best, and that effort will positively benefit every child in the school. Teachers are molding tomorrow's world, right? Think about the effects of inclusion in the long run. The disability employment rate is horrible and will remain horrible until students with disabilities are included with their peers in school. I believe teachers should think about these goals when educating children with disabilities, preparation for employment or college, or independent living. Sometimes all three or a combination applies to a student. Parents need to be aware from the start if the test is going to lead to regular or modified high school diploma. One thing that excites me about inclusion is when it's done well, it will stop the need to push some children out for, say, reading or math help. Pulling a child out is not good. It singles them out from their peers and disrupts attention spans. I was pulled out in elementary school. I hated it. Just think, how well does it benefit the child if the child doesn't even want to participate. A child shuts down when they're angry or embarrassed. It can be embarrassing to be pulled out of a class. I've had many creative minds in my education, from homemade splints to homemade worksheets that made it easier for me to type my name. My teachers, therapists, and aides were always coming up with something so I could be included in class. There were times when my peers helped me. At lunch, my friend helped me eat. I used a special design block. My aide and her husband designed it for me. I still use it to this day. My friends would set a sandwich or pizza on the block, and I would eat at my own pace. The block was eye level, and it also had a juice box holder on the side. Being alone with my peers was critical in my development. It allowed for blinds to be formed new when it had never had happened if there was an adult present. I remember in elementary school when my aides kept following me around during recess. It took me some courage for me to ask her to back off. She took it well, thank goodness. Children act differently towards one another when there's adults around. I think it teaches some, but nothing like the bullying. But nothing like the bullying I hear about today. I'm sure it helped that there was my aide around for a lot of the time. I can't imagine being bullied by today's kids. The teasing I received didn't bother me much. Maybe because it never lasted long or my personality handled it well. I believe if inclusion is started young, the children with disabilities in the classroom will be the norm as they should be. Bullying is often exists because of perceived differences. Children will stick up for friends when they're being bullied. Bullying cannot be the sole reason to not include students with disabilities in the classroom. Bullies will do what they do regardless if there's a child with a disability present or not. The disability itself should not turn into a scapegoat of the reason of bullying. Address the root of the problem, which is the bullying, not the disability. Some of my modifications I can remember was for my one-on-one aid, physical therapy, and occupational therapy during PE class, a homemade splint to keep my fingers straight for the computer typing in kindergarten, also a board with cut-out holes for the keyboard. Later on, a head stick, which I just loved wearing around teenage boys in high school computer class. Now I have a job that's 100% faster that mounts to the desk and not me. Blue quarters never worked. Either they were too bulky to carry or a paperback book will not stay open. The point is we tried them though. In high school, I left class 5 minutes early because the school was overcrowded and the halls became a nightmare. On some occasions, I did have to maneuver through the crowd. Kids would line up behind me and walk because I happened to part the sea of people with my power chair, which was kind of funny. I had to answer verbally, so I whispered a lot to my aide. I took my test in the hallway. It wasn't until the new middle school opened until I had a regular room to go to take the test. In the high school, it was back to taking tests in the hallway. And the first power chair, I got my first power chair because of my IAP. I got it in kindergarten. Of course, it belonged to the school and I couldn't take it home. I didn't get my own power chair until 3rd grade. Inclusion needs the cooperation of teachers, students, and parents. There was a time in my education where choices were made that had a negative outcome for me. Early in school, when it was still simple enough, I was teamed up and worked with a friend of mine to complete classwork. In 8th grade science, it was my friend Stephanie. She was so smart and it was incredible. I did contribute to the classwork, but the trouble happened when we moved into 9th grade. It was clear Stephanie needed to be placed in advanced science, but did I? But that's what happened, and it turned out to be a mistake. I had failing grades for 3/4 of the year before switching to regular science. I tried my best. I loved the teacher, but I did not belong in advanced science. After the switch, I made B's instead of F's. Another thing that's positive about inclusion is children from the same family can go to the same school. No more segregating children into separate schools. Special education is a service, it's not a place. My younger brother is 3.5 years younger than me. There weren't a lot of times we went to the same school. I did look forward to riding the bus home with him and the neighborhood kids. There were a few years here and there when I rode special ed bus. I hated it. I was alone by myself on a long ride because I lived in the country. I've heard bad stories about children with disabilities riding a special bus because they had to go to a special school. When there's no other eyes around to witness, bad things can happen. Nothing bad happened to me, but I do remember the bus aide and the guys were talking about in the pulpit things and it gave me nightmares. I also remember nightmares about being on a runaway bus all by myself. Shipmates should go to the same school and ride the same bus. I graduated high school with a regular diploma. My IEP team knew from when I was young a regular diploma was my goal. We used the IEP once to allow for no foreign language for me, and I still would earn a regular diploma. It took a year and a half. I took a year and a half of that in high school. It was not good. To feel I sometimes cheated, yes. But my aide was very adamant that no phone calls were to be taken if it could be helped. Over a lot. She kept my education fair as possible. In high school, assignments were more heavy. Later on, she told me some of my teachers came to her because they had a hard time grading me. They weren't sure how to take into account my disability in my schoolwork. My technology wasn't that great, and it caused me to be slow. So in classes like computer, often the teacher had to grade me on what I had done. It was tough, and I feel the same problems when it comes to employment. A boss needs things done in time to meet the bottom line. It's just a fact. Some employees with disabilities need a little extra time. So how does that fit in? In high school, there were no such push for me towards college. I do believe in options and choices. But what scared me and what happened to me is I got placed in the easiest, safest, most exercise option. I was not challenged to go to college. I was placed in the vocational training with all the other kids with a disability. The vocational rehab gave out certificates, not degrees, which is what I needed to be taken seriously in job interviews. It always puzzled me as to why all this effort and resources have been put into including me in the public school just to be dropped after graduation. What a colossal waste. After high school, I was too busy learning the ropes. I was too busy learning the ropes of organizing my independent living in the home care to worry about college. Years later, I'm still learning how to manage my home care. Why was this not taught with rehab, or better yet in high school? Why wasn't there somebody at my high school to help me plan for managing aids for college? I believe children's eyes are open to new ways of thinking when students with disabilities are included in the classroom. In 8th grade computer class, I used a stick that was attached to my headgear to type. I used sticky keys and mouse keys to operate the computer. The numeral pad was a type of compass to move the cursor and act as a mouse. One day, the boy sitting next to me said, "The way you're doing it is better. You can be more precise with the drawing because with my mouse it moves all over the place." That made me feel better because, as I said before, I was slow in computer class. It had never occurred to me that I had an advantage over my non-disabled classmates. We both taught each other something that day. To this attitude to the barriers, to me, it's adults. Society has to change its perception of disability, and if part of that is how society chooses to educate children with disabilities. The first time I was made aware of perception barriers was in 6th grade. The teacher had to choose who they thought would do the best job showing the upcoming 5th graders around the school. I was chosen from my class. Apparently one of the guidance counselors thought otherwise. It hurt me very much. It was my first time I was aware of a person of being discriminated towards him, of discrimination. My teachers thought I would be the best to show them around. I was chosen for a reason. Clearly, this meant nothing to the guidance counselor. On a side note, the guidance counselor was African American. I never understood why a group that was once discriminated against and still is would practice discrimination towards another group. A long story short, my aide strongly advocated for me, and I got to show the 5th graders around school. I noticed what the principal said, practice inclusion, don't see it has anything to do with special education. They see it as a way of educating their students on the whole. No one is singled out as getting modified education. To achieve the best education for a child, and the teacher, special ed teacher, parent, and the students should give their all. Sometimes it can be hard working together. People must keep a level head. Of course, every child with a disability is not going to be able to earn a regular diploma, but teachers need to push every child to the maximum. The expectation for students with disabilities needs to be higher. Some of us can't go to college. Teachers need to recognize the potential in kids with disabilities. Teachers can open up the world to amazing future if they push and expect more from students with disabilities. Each child with a disability education should be individualized. What works for one child may not work for another, and that's okay. I hope you realize that that's the case for children without disabilities too. Long-term goals should be set early on. Does the future hold college, or is learning basic independent living skills more practical? At each IEP meeting, the parent should be making sure if their child is being challenged. An IEP is a work in progress and should be edited regularly. Inclusion is a collaboration between student, teacher, and parent at every IEP meeting. Don't have an IEP meeting without the student present. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about TTAC. It's a Virginia resource, and it's ttaconline.org. It's Virginia's Department of Education, Training, and Technical Assistance Centers serving children and youth with disabilities. Every principal, assistant principal, and teacher should know about TTAC. They provide services to increase the abilities of schools, school personnel, service providers, and families to meet the needs of children and youth. I believe the end of segregating people with disabilities in society starts with inclusion in school. When people grow together, perceptions about disability change. I am proof that inclusion can work. I still keep in touch with a lot of my classmates. Recently, I gave a public comment on inclusion in my local school board. Recently, I had the opportunity to ask my classmates what it was like being in the classroom with me. They were kind enough to allow me to read their comments to the school board. Inclusion has provided me with lifetime friends. It's a huge gift that has made my quality of life more meaningful. Friendship and health are the two most important things many different cultures say. Average friends of a typical adult is 150. The average number of friends for people with disability is 20. Half are family and half are service providers. By segregating children with disability from their peers, it's providing them the gift of friendship. I've seen teachers and administrators get caught up on the logistics of inclusion, such as having never-ending conversations about the cost. That is important, but meanwhile, guess who is losing out? The student waiting to be educated. There's no one-size-fits-all to inclusion. You have to jump in, be open-minded, and work together to reach success. A good example of successful inclusion is in Montgomery County, Virginia Public Schools. For your homework, read and watch the documentary, including Samuel. Also go to YouTube and watch the clip from the documentary about Keith Strong. there's also a great chapter about education for people with disabilities in Kathy Snell's book. Her book is called Disability is Natural. Thank you.